on this stage, almost anything can happen. And having that sort of, that freedom to be just as creative as possible is just such a freeing experience.
And that's one of the things that attracted me in the first place. It's not supposed to last. I do think that there's something that happens in the room that is indefinable but real, that only can be experienced in person.
The feeling that the thing that we're doing was born here is super special.
The whole idea of the revival is to return improvisation to its birthplace. And this is a Hyde Park, University of Chicago invention. But the origin of improvisation is not first and foremost as a performing art. Its true origin is as a teaching tool.
Viola Spolin was a theorist of improvisation and its uses in the theater. She was a writer, and she was a director.
But she had worked with Neva Boyd at Hull House, who had taught her the idea of using traditional storytelling games to help people bridge the gap between cultures, particularly immigrant children. And Viola's great idea was to invent new games.
They called it group work. We now call it social work. They used play to bring the group together, to integrate them into American culture through play.
So the kids' concentration went from being inhibited to how cleverly can I fulfill the rules of the game. The kids were delighted to perform it because they'd come up with it and they had pride in what they'd invented.
Paul Sills was a director born into the theater, as they say, because he was Viola's son, so he was singularly driven in that way. I've known very few people like him. He lived and breathed the theater.
I knew about Paul before I met him because he was a myth in the University of Chicago Society, and Paul was also directing at the University of Chicago, directing a workshop which startled me and stunned me, really. It was so wonderfully rich and active without any script at all the time creating a great deal of concrete reality through the games that Paul was using, which were the games of Viola Spolin.
Shepard was an inspired amateur. You know, he really didn't quite know what he was doing. He was not a great director. He was a semi-inept producer. But what he was a visionary. He was into it for social purposes, for reforming society, for liberating people. But Paul actually started a working, functioning theater that took off and made money.
They didn't charge for tickets. The only way they made money was by selling beer at the bar.
And then something interesting happened. A man named Freddie Ranovics, who was the owner of the bar where they were playing in the back room of a bar, said, "Show's going great, it's a big hit. It would be even better if the show could be half an hour longer so I could sell another round of drinks."
So they decided they would do the first and second acts as planned and then come out for a third act that was truly improvised.
Hey, why don't we take suggestions from the audience and do scenes based on audience suggestion?
And that really was the first time that improvisation as we know it was presented to a live audience. Improvisation was first practiced by bona fide intellectuals. And so the linkage to the University of Chicago is obvious.
So we brought in a really diverse and interesting group of free-thinking people, and they created something entirely new.
They would quite literally bring the newspaper on stage and read an article front to back, set it down, and then improvise a scene or scenes based on that. And Mike Nichols was one of those guys. And then it was at a coffee shop down the block that he bumped into Elaine May. Started off as a duo that lasted for decades.
And Paul Sills, seeing that his old friends had done very well with this kind of humor, said, maybe if I do a more sophisticated version of the Compass, that might work.
What happened was about 3 years after Compass collapsed, Paul Sills and Howie Hawk and Bernie Solomons came to my apartment in New York where I had now a wife and 2 children, and asked me to come to Chicago to work with them on something they called Second City.
And of course, Second City conquered the world, and we all live in a world dominated entirely by Second City.
I understand that a lot of people improvise because they like the laughter and they think that's why they're there. I don't view that as the job description. I view the job description as paying attention and responding moment to moment.
I know the greatest improviser at any moment is the person who most that second is just paying attention.
Because we all have to agree that this is real.
So we believe that when the lights come up and we look at each other, there'll be a moment there that feels like something.
And we also both believe that the job is not to get laughs and be liked. That's not the job.
The mundane can be fascinating. Improvisation shows that the recreation of reality is sometimes more than enough.
As a matter of fact, don't let them laugh. Don't dissipate any building pressure with little laughs.
In improvisation, the conflict is inherent in the room because no one knows what the hell is going to happen. So the tension's already there of like, oh boy, this could be bad.
And fortunately, with improvisation, at least I've got my friend. I can't be by myself. It requires other people.
Coming in, especially at like some performing group, you want to be like, oh, I want to be the funniest person in the room. But I think after time, you realize like, oh, this is a group thing. Like improv is so based around like a group working together. So I've definitely like become a better listener through the process, and being able to like work with other people and realize like you need to come together or else like you can't do it on your own.
Whenever 2 or more of you are doing this, another life is created, the life of the piece.
I'll be a more thoughtful person if I pay attention. I'll be a quieter person if I pay attention. They talk about mindfulness. That's paying attention.
We can work together to get to something I couldn't do by myself.
I'm passionate about teaching Viola's theater games because every single workshop is this amazing exploration of how incredible humanity is if you let them be.
Well, what's wonderful about improvisation is, quite obviously, it is all made up on the spot. And so all you have and all you are is whatever you bring to that moment, whatever you bring to the stage. So training, status, background, none of it matters in that moment. You are there. You are likely across from another individual or several other individuals, and there you are. What are you going to do about it? What now?
I would probably tell someone if they were interested in it at all, like do it and go for it.